Hello and welcome back to the BCR Dawson Sub. This is a layout update for the month of March 2022. After completing the south wall benchwork installation, I've now been focused on the sections for Highway 97 and the Pine River and the extension of the Fort St. John subdivision to Septimus. So we'll take a look at each of those and see what's been happening during the past month. So the first thing to show you for the month of March is that we now have the lighting canopy installed above Dawson Creek. That completes the original bench work for the south wall. So you can see 6 sections of bench work here, and I've got the lighting reconnected so that I can see what I'm doing here in the room. And if I pan to the left here, you can see that there's a gap of about 26 inches, which is going to be filled with new sections. And I've completed the design work for that, so that'll get built in due course. Here we are at the workbench, and I'm assembling some components for the Pine River Bridge. The first major component is the micro-engineering bridge flex track, which you see here. Assembly involves gluing the guardrails in position between the main rails and also the guard timbers on either side. Now the instructions call for the guardrails to be located between 2 little bumps on each tie, fairly close to the main rails. But on the prototype, I noticed that the guardrails are set in much further. There's actually more or less an even spacing between the 4 rails, so that's what I've done here. And this track is now ready to be painted and weathered and placed on the bridge. I also need some refuge bays, 3 in total, and the micro-engineering ones are not the right style and they don't go together very well, so I elected to build my own out of styrene. These are the first ones I built using 40 by 40 thou posts and 15 by 40 sideboards, and then I used some scribed styrene for the base. Those turned out really well, but they look a little heavy to my eye. These ones were built using 30 by 30 posts with 10 by 30 sideboards, and they have a finer appearance, so I think I'm going to go with those. I built 5 and I need 3. So these will have to be glued onto some longer timbers, which will then slide in between the ties on the track to lock them in place. I need to figure out how far away from the bridge they need to be so that cars will clear them when they go by. So these details, again, will be painted and weathered and then ready to be glued in place on the bridge. This is the Pine River Bridge section on the lower level, and I've been working on this section during March. And we'll just show you a few things that we've been working on. The first is the piece of track that leads from the bridge to the helix. This track was damaged during the move and I had to replace it. So what I did is I took off this section and traced it so that I could duplicate the sub-road bed, and then I created a new piece of track which is now in place, and it is wired down into the bus wires. It is still loose on top of here so that I can make some final adjustments when we add the helix. I've also got the final model of the Pine River Bridge out of storage. It has been in storage for quite a few years, and we've been using the temporary bridge because we were working on wiring and whatnot above. So now this model is ready to come back onto the layout. So there's several jobs to be done here. One is to get the track wired and into the bus wires, and that'll happen over here at each end of the bridge. Feeder wires will come from the track down to those terminal blocks that you see there, and that will allow the bridge to be removed on occasion if necessary. I also need to get the track painted and weathered and get some refuge bays put in, and then that model will be ready to enjoy on the layout. I've also been working on the express net and the wiring underneath, making repairs, and that's progressing well. And this section will finally receive a coat of paint on the backdrop just to clean it up and make it look nice. A few further developments with the Pine River Bridge. I've terminated the guardrails at either end of the bridge. They come to a point, so the rails were bent to shape and glued in place in the center of the track. And as we come along the bridge here, we can see the refuge bays sitting in place. Those are going to work quite nicely. There's one just in from either end of the bridge, and there's one in the middle. Everything's sitting in place quite loosely right now. And here are the guardrails terminated at the north end of the bridge. So now the track needs to be painted and weathered and then glued down, and then we will have the bridge ready for action. This is the section for the Highway 97 overpass. In front, we have the Dawson Creek Subdivision curving across the Highway 97, which will be on these white risers from Woodland Scenics. And in the rear, we have the end of the Fort St. John Subdivision. It originally terminated in the corner here. I'm going to be extending this subdivision into the next room. So it's going to follow a new alignment, which will look something like that. The track will curve around through the backdrop, along the wall, through the wall, and into the next room. To conceal that from the track in front, I'm planning to put in front a low backdrop, which will look something like this. The scenery will lead up to it, yet if we need to get in the back to attend to any problems on the track, we can easily get in there. This extension of the Fort St. John subdivision requires a new branch and extension of the command bus, which we call the ExpressNet for the Lens digital command control system. So using these diagrams, we've created a branch by coming out the back of the fascia plate here. That fascia plate is mounted on the front of the section here. And if we come inside and look down, you can see that the cable comes out the back, and then it runs through the module and out the back wall. And from there, it will follow the tracks all the way to Septimus. So this is the work that's been completed on the Highway 97 overpass section so far. This is the rear of the Highway 97 section. You can see the track coming through the backdrop, and it's going to run along that wall behind the Pine River section and then through the wall. And here we also see the command bus extension, which comes out the back, and this has received its jack on the end, and this cable is going to follow along, and I've made 3 additional sections of cable to get us all the way down to Septimus. If I pan over here, you can see the 3 sections of benchwork that have now been painted, and this is to support the Fort St. John subdivision along the wall. So this section here is going to go onto the back of the Highway 97 section. This section will be attached to the wall, and then the 3rd section is sitting in here, which will take it into the next room. So all of this is now ready for track on top, and the wiring will go underneath. And once all that's in place and working, then the Highway 97 section and the Pine River section will be able to be mounted on the wall, and then the sections above them. I'm looking forward to getting that done. Here I am laying out the S-curve that's going to bring the track through the wall from the layout room into the bedroom. This is a little tricky to try and organize because the track's got to go through one opening and then out through another. So what I've done is I've traced those sections onto the paper, and then I've laid out an S-curve of track, and I'm just testing with a couple of longer freight cars here to make sure that when these cars go through, they will actually clear the openings in the wall on either side. And once this is done, then I will copy this alignment and transfer it to the actual layout sections so that I can lay my track accurately through that S-curve. The last thing to show for the month of March is the new benchwork for Septimus. Here we can see that it is in 2 sections, about 6 inches wide, and the total run is about 11 feet long along the wall. The section on the right is the first section. The tracks will come through the backdrop from the other room, through that opening, and then they'll run along the section. The left-hand section has an opening for one of the lens faceplates, and also some extensions on the fascia for some throttle pockets. And the end is tapered to fit behind the entry door. So this benchwork is ready for priming and painting, and then we'll be able to lay the track and the wiring and get it installed on the wall. So that's it for this month's layout update. I'd like to acknowledge my friends Michael, Doug, and John who've helped with the layout work this month. And I'd like to thank you for visiting. And once again, please consider liking and subscribing the channel. And there's further information on my website at www.bcrdawsonsub.ca. We'll see you again soon. Until then, peace be with you.